Welcome to Comic Wars. Think of the show as Fight Night, but without the mess of actual combat. The data will speak for itself before the outcome, but in case it doesn't, we will break all of it down in the outcome at the end of the show. Without further ado, let's get right into the overview. So as usual, if we would have a guest, guests would be introduced here. They would have their just initial guesses before going over the information, background details, and all that. And then we'll go on to the background details, of course, pulling out some little details about the characters that could be crucial to the battle itself. Generally not, but sometimes it can be. And on top of that, we have the feats. They're the best strength feats. So how hard they can hit, how much they can lift, how much they've thrown, how fast they can run, their durability, so how much damage they can take. Maybe they're an expert martial artist. We're going to go and list everything we possibly can, including powers and equipment if they have it. This is where we're going to go and just set that in stone. This is what they come with. After that, we go into the data analysis, which is going to break things down, most of which will get broke down through the feats, but if there's any little details we do need to include, we'll include them here and why they are important. After that, we get into the character pros and cons, which is basically going to kind of give you a little bit of a simulation, if you will, their biggest strengths and weaknesses against each other, and just overall strengths and weaknesses, and kind of see how that matches up. After that, then we get the guest analysis if we have a guest. Tonight we don't have a guest, so there won't be any analysis, but that'll be based on what they know and what they've read, and we're going to compare and contrast. After that, then we get the outcome, just kind of laying out roughly what the odds are of each other beating one another. And after that, then we get into the preview. But tonight, on top of the preview, I also have an announcement for starting. It'll be once a month. We are going to do we're going to have another show. We're going to go and discuss, and then on top of that, we have some upcoming content. And then we also have we're also going to add another weekly show, which is just going to be our investigative show most likely, but it might end up being something else. But without further ado, let's get right into the characters. So our first character tonight is Debug. He's a character from my own series of Crowworks comics. He exists in the Crowverse, if you will. This character here, he's an interesting one because I didn't actually get to get a full comic out for him, but there is some details throughout the reading. So we are actually going over some of the stuff that was going to be that's going to be put out shortly after, most likely our first convention, either in January or February. He'll have a little mini comic come out, just kind of covering his origin, and then we're going to go move on, and there should be some more content coming out from there. There is more to come about that. But his real name is Antonio Rolfe. He is 20 years old. He is 6 foot 4 inches tall, and he weighs approximately 180 pounds. Now, he's quite the genius here because, well, he's a computer programmer and software developer. Just because you're that doesn't necessarily make you that. We're going to get into this. This guy is incredibly smart. And you'll see why here in a second as I go over more. But his area of operation, there's 2 areas. Rain City, which is in his version of reality, where Crow resides, where Wolf resides, and where a lot of the violence does take place. However, his powers also come from the video game that he created for the Steam Enterprises company. It's actually an MMORPG, so if you guys are not familiar with that, it's a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. So there's a lot of up, and getting different equipment, and different sets, and different mounts, all sorts of things like this. That's also part of his area operation. He does take on hackers and other people that are trying to destroy the game, including competitors of Steampunk Enterprises and some of the and some other people of interest. As for his personality, he's very timid, shy. You really want to look at it that way. He's highly intelligent, and in his words, violence is the last option. So, if there's any kinds of issues arise, he's more likely to talk it out than he is to fight. But if there's no other option, say for instance somebody were to strike first, then he might just hop in the fray just because, well, they gave him no option. And if he's got no option, what would be his last option, if you will? Right, and just to kind of show you where this all connects, he's an avid gamer, so he's on this game often. Overworld Plus, he's on that constantly, getting gear, getting raids, raiding, taking on dungeons, world bosses, like. But he's very, very helpful as well, often going way out of his way to go and help out people move forward in hopes that eventually they'll potentially return the favor, but if not, he's just happy to make sure they're doing well and not getting beaten down by veteran players. As for his friends, well, he's best friends with Daniel Parker, who, during his origin, all this, Daniel Parker runs away. Debug doesn't actually find out until later on, towards the end of the first arc, if you will. And Curtis Fox, who's also known as Wolf, who's actually, you guys will hear more about him at a later time. But they're both best friends with each other as well. So it's a big triangle of friendship there. It's pretty cool. But their dynamic is a little interesting. But enough about them as friends. Let's get into the feats. So his strength, well, he's roughly an average human male. He's nothing exceptional when it comes to strength or speed or agility. He's just an average guy. So whatever the average guy is capable of, it's basically what he's capable of. Sometimes a little bit better, sometimes a little worse. So, as for his durability, he was able to shrug off hits from several 50 caliber rounds while moving toward Locust Gang attackers. Now, just to give you guys a who's who of who the Locust Gang is, they're a group of terrorists that during 9/11, because 9/11 happened in their universe as well, this is equivalent of like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and ISIS. But imagine just they're all over the world constantly attacking people, similar to what they're already doing. But he was able to shrug off several 50 caliber rounds. Didn't make him budge at all, and he just kept moving toward the Locust Gang attackers. Now, keep in mind, this is using his Earthen Guard set, which we're going to get into in a bit. That's where he's capable. His highest durability comes from that. So his combat capabilities, he's got no martial arts training at all. But he does his best work with a sword, which you'll see is his most common utilized weapon. His ingenuity, though, well, he swaps between his different equipped sets using his Pixelmancy power to confuse, intimidate, and overwhelm his opponents. Now, we're about to get into Pixelmancy, and it's a little bit of a weird power. Just before I go and really get into it, really just consider it kind of like the typical hard light trope. Is it matter? If you consider light matter and that's it, then that's the matter it is, which we know is just a wavelength. But he uses that, and he's able to harden it, if you will. It's magic. End of the day, it is magic and technology melded into one. As for how he got his powers, this is also crucial into getting into it. His consciousness and his soul was trapped inside of Overworld Plus when it went down. This Overworld Plus, the best way to describe it, you're hooked up into a machine, and your consciousness controls it. You go into the game. You don't necessarily feel the pain per se, but you do interact using your own reflexes and all this. It's state of the art when it comes to Rain City's technology. It's quite the marvel, if you will. But during an attack from the Locust Gang, and this gets into things that occur later in the Crowverse story, so you guys are getting a little bit of a preview here. Steam Tech Enterprise is attacked by the Locust Gang because Steam Tech, Franklin Cleveland, who is the CEO of Steam Tech Enterprises, has just gotten back from fighting over in the Middle East against the Locust Gang. And he chose not to get a whole lot of medical attention for his prosthetics from the military. And he knew he had some better stuff that he'd already made back at home, and he had some experimental stuff. And he wanted to try it out on himself, make sure it worked out perfectly. So he came back to the States, and this is when Antonio Rolfe was dinking around in Overworld Plus game. And he's inside, and when the Locust Gang attacked, all power was shut down, and he was trapped inside. And he was trapped inside for approximately 3 hours. So his body itself was dead. It was working, but there was no soul, there was no consciousness. He was all trapped inside the game. And because he was trapped, when it got turned back on and people were able to get him out, get it all figured out and everything, his soul and everything was brought back to his body, but now he was able to take part from the game and pull it into reality. Therefore, using his Pixelmance abilities, he can conjure any equipped sets, and we're going to get right into that right now. So I know it's a lot to take in. This character's got a lot to him. By Pixelmancy, the user can conjure equipped sets from the Overworld Plus MMORPG. However, the user is limited to swapping between 6 equipped sets. At any given time, they have to be equipped to him, or else he cannot use them. Additionally, Pixelmancy can affect and alter program technology and magical items. So anything that's got a connection to magic, he can actually mess with. He can alter it. He can change it. This is a really, really interesting power because this is a guy who's got a magical power, but it's also tech-based, technically. It's tech and magic combined and infused biologically. But he's able to go and alter all sorts of different things when it comes to electronic keypads, for instance, any kind of electronics he can actually, if it's been programmed, okay, so it's coded, things like this, he can, let's say it's a lock, he can just unlock it. He's choosing to unlock it. He doesn't have to use his set or anything, it's just he has the power, so he can just be like, now I'm going to go get it. So he can get in through locked doors pretty easily, especially those high security ones. Comes to a server, he can totally disrupt it. He can rip the data out if he really wanted to. His power is quite the utility belt. There's things he can do with it. But let's get into the sets he can use his Pixelmance. He's got his first set, which is the Gilded Adventurer Set 1. Which comes with 2 Gladius with gilded hilts, just jewel crested. They got some gold, but that doesn't really matter what it looks like. But what this does is it allows the user to perfectly complete any skill that the set weapon is capable of using in World Plus. There's 2 abilities. Now this is basically, it's kind of like running on autopilot. Once he goes into use one of these skills, he can't stop it. He has to go for it. This gets into some little nasty things with it. And if he's not too careful, because it's game based, this is where things get weird. He can glitch, which is extremely harmful to him if done in matter ways. In other words, he can get trapped in walls. Will they kill him? Yes. He doesn't have any advanced healing, so he'd be just dead. So he has to be very, very careful about his weapons and armor, unless they can glitch. His armor, if it's glitched, and he can glitch into things, that's the problem. So, but his first one he's got is called Rising Cleave. So this is, for those that are familiar with the Final Fantasy series, this is very similar to the Clean Hazard ability Cloud Strife uses. If you look at the description here, the user stabs an opponent, the blade of the sword facing upward. The user then rips upward through the opponent 10 feet in the air. The user raises the sword up and out of the opponent, over their head, and then cleaves the opponent downward into the ground with the blade facing toward the ground. That's essentially Clean Hazard. Essentially what he uses. But this is the catch with it. During these, he cannot be interrupted. He'll keep charging forward to hit. This is where some things can become kind of an issue, because it's essentially a lock. So keep going until charge them until he hits them. So that's a risky move for him to use, technically speaking. After that, he's got the sword barrier. The user swings their sword at such a fast pace that allows the user to be unharmed from arrows and bullets. That's the speed it can. That's the maximum speed it can hit. So could it hit things like a cannonball? Yes. To everyone around the user, it appears if the user has dozens of sword slash after images around them. So it looks like there's a bunch of slashing swords just right in front of him and all around him. But this is, once again, this is one of those ones he does have control over. He can stop it at any time. But once it's going, because he doesn't have any strength feat, really, he doesn't have any speed feat, this is something that the Pixelmancy does. Is he moving? Yes. Because that's the important part, why he is covered in armor, and why he's got his weapon or weapons. As for his and other equipped sets, that's just one set right there. Next, we have Gilded Adventure Set 2, which this comes with it's a gladius with a gilded hilt, same one as he's holding right there, and a steel buckler, same as he's holding here. Hardened leather armor, which is what he's got on here. So he's very lightweight overall, but he's also going to be decently armored. But once again, same thing. He can use the set's weapon and shield abilities. So he's got two there. This is more of a defensive one. He's got Phalanx. The user gets into a defensive position, and their aura, essentially, it gains resistance. So it's like, goes from just kind of being able to swing right at him and hit him to now you're hitting essentially almost steel with it. But he gains this heavy resistance to physical, non-magical strikes. Okay, so anything that is mental can hit him. Any kind of mind-based attacks, any kind of magical attacks will hit him. So, but this just gives a little added protection if he's fighting people, just like with guns. Any kind of technology. This is going to give him some defensive capabilities. As for his other ability, it's called Disarm and Destroy. The user slams their shield in the face or body of the opponent with the intent to stun, and follows it up with a stab to the opponent's body. And next we have the Salamandrake set. It's a huge two-handed cleaver. Looks just like a cleaver. Okay, just keep that in mind. And he's also got magically infused molten armor that doesn't burn the user. So it's not necessarily dripping or anything, but if somebody were to swing into him, it's molten. So could he be still hit? Yes, technically, if he can get through molten metal, but the molten metal itself will not hurt him at all. Allows the user to launch themselves 50 feet in the air and glide on wings of dragonfire, which is magical. Keep that in mind. It can only be put out once the user has touched the ground, or if the fire is struck by water magic specifically. The user can, I also forgot to put a parenthesis there, whoops. The user can gather energy into their weapon in order to launch dragonfire crescent slashes, like blade beam-like attacks, up to 30 feet away, and he's now immune, or not immune, but water-based attacks now damage him. So if somebody is splashing him with water, for instance, technically speaking, that can hurt him. That actually does hurt him now at this point. Now he gains a weakness to water. So couldn't go diving in a river while it got the Salamandrake set equipped. Next we have the Treant set. It's a one-handed sword with 4 small branch blades sprouting from the initial blade. And a wooden buckler and magic-infused bark plate armor. Allows the user to summon roots to capture enemies up to 20 feet away. The roots sap life energy away from captured foes, which then replenishes health to the user. So this gives him a regenerative ability. If he is slashed, let's say he is bleeding out, he gets stabbed in the throat, something like this, he can actually recover from this. This will actually heal his wounds. In the game, it's a different story, just recovers hit points. But this, in the real world, well, in Rain City, when he's in his reality, it actually does give him a healing factor, if used. But downside to this is the roots only stay active for 10 seconds. And on top of that, fire-based attacks also damage him, and if they can damage him quite a bit. So, and next he's got the Earthen Guard set, which is he comes with a broadsword with amber gems in the hilt, a steel tower shield, and a heavy steel plate armor with steel scale mail underneath. He's heavily armored. Allows the user to summon rock walls from the ground. If the user is able to store energy into this set for 60 seconds, he can now materialize 1 stone golem, which is approximately 10 feet tall and around 1,800 pounds. And that'll materialize and aid the user in combat. Yes, it will swing. Yes, it will guard. It will do whatever it can to protect Debug, but at the same time, it's also going to be trying to go and destroy his opponents, which are all, once again, his choice of targets. So all he has to do is choose. Essentially, this is my target. Bam, Golem goes right after him. Nature and wind-based attacks now do double damage to the user of Pixelmancy. So nature-based attacks would be like, for instance, somebody threw some roots at him, or his roots were to go around him, wrap him up. So for instance, if Naruto from the Senju clan, those roots would actually they would hurt him pretty bad. They wouldn't actually necessarily have to pierce him or anything. Just enough to wrap around him is enough to he can't do anything about it. Essentially, he has a weakness to it. And wind-based attacks, if somebody's able to slam him with a gust of wind hard enough, that can do all sorts of damage to him and screw him up as well. That includes destroying his rock walls. Regular wind, like a gust of wind, isn't enough. It's got to be some kind of a wind-based attack, specifically. As for his last set, he has the Jelly Golem set, which contains 2 Shatter Blades. Now, for those that are interested in or just curious, what is a Shatter Blade? It's a magical weapon that it can be thrown at a distance, so it shatters into several pieces, and then they'll fling at the opponent of his choice, or opponents of his choice, and then they'll return back into blade form. He can also use it to strike normally, but he can also use it to strike and shatter and do all sorts of other really cool things. Really, really interesting weapon. But this comes with, basically it's clothing with a thin layer of magical slime that moves to catch incoming attacks automatically. However, extreme heat forces the slime away from the location of extreme heat. So fire would make it so basically he's going to get hit no matter what. It could be some kind of a flame blast. It could be bullets. They're extreme heat. Anything of extreme heat itself will force it away. However, somebody's slamming down a hammer on him, it's going to catch it. And it won't just catch right there, it'll literally catch it. So he won't feel anything at all. It would never make contact. Just like a blade, it couldn't get to him. Once again, things would have to be they would have to be super heated. All right. So that's what we have for Debug. So I know he's a little bit of an interesting character. He's got a lot going on. But let's get into another interesting character. We got Edward Elric. His code name is the Fullmetal Alchemist. He's 18 years old. He is 4 foot 8 inches. He is short. Just don't tell him that. That really upsets him. His occupation is a state alchemist. He's actually a major for the military. His area of operation is Amestris. He goes all over Amestris. He does go outside of it a little bit, but it depends on the content you're looking at, but he also primarily sticks to Amestris. His personality, well, he's a bit rash. He's easily angered. He's very, very intelligent. Super highly, highly intelligent. But he's cocky at the same time. So you can see how these things kind of, they hurt each other a little bit. Just personality alone. But he's very, very loyal to his family and friends. And he has an extreme dislike towards milk. Not that milk's going to be in this battle at all, but throwing it out there, he does not like milk. As for his feats, his strength, well, depending on which one you go after the manga and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. He's got his own feats, and then you've also got the one from his feats from the first anime to come out from Funimation. But we're just going to stick with Brotherhood because, well, he's got a lot more feats throughout Brotherhood than he did in the Funimation one. But he's been able to punch directly through a wall. I don't remember if it was stone or wood, but he was able to punch through it with ease. His durability, he's taken hits from envy in monster form, which is big enough to destroy buildings and destroy walls without really even trying. And he's been able to tank hits from that. He's blocked Scar's destruction alchemy. We'll get into what that is here in a second, but essentially that just destroys things. It's alchemy that literally just destroys. That's all it does. He survived several explosions, including one he was standing on top of, which is equivalent to roughly 102 tons of TNT of force. And that's if you want to go off of Death Battle's calculations. It could be a little more, it could be a little less. His automail also wasn't destroyed, which is his limbs. We'll get into that in a second as well. It wasn't damaged from a lion chimera's bite on it, which is roughly, once again, according to Death Battle, it's roughly about 1,000 psi. Going back over the Captain Meow Meow, it's about that. It's between 900 and 1,100 or so psi. So 1,000 is good guess, or good average, if you will. As for his speed and agility, this guy's got quite the agility here. He's been able to dodge a point-blank bullet right to the face. Just no problem. As for his combat capabilities, martial arts, he's got some training in jiu-jitsu, and he's definitely a brawler. He does a lot of haymakers and really, really heavy attacks. Doesn't do as many. I mean, in Brotherhood, he does tend to go and get a little more on the boxer type of things, but he does use a lot of jiu-jitsu. A lot of throwing people and pinning and arm and leg locks, things like that. As for ingenuity, well, this one, it's quite the feat itself. So he was able to transmute greed, which is a homunculus, whose ability is to change his body composition to be nigh impervious. There's very, very little that can actually just go right through his defenses, but essentially he's the armored homunculus. And he was able to figure out what his body composition was just during the fight. And this is only after a few different attacks. He was able to figure it out and was able to transmute his body so that way he could just injure him with ease. As for his equipment he comes equipped with the Northern Automail variant arm and leg, which are just they're lightweight, durable aluminum and carbon alloy prosthetics, but he can utilize them just as if they were a regular limb. That's the difference between a prosthetic in Amestris versus a prosthetic in our reality, is they actually, no problem. There's no attachment to the brain or anything, it just works. It's borderline magic. As for his powers, he comes with combat alchemy. It doesn't need transmutation circles to transmute objects. All he does is he claps and taps, and all he has to do is have in his mind how the composition and what he wants it to go and turn into or pull from it or whatever he wants to do with it, he can do it. He can also do or perform soul binding, which he can bind a human soul to an object, which he's done to his brother Alphonse by binding his brother's soul to a suit of armor after they did a failed attempt of human alchemy. And that is literally trying to bring people back to life, which they tried to bring their mother back to life. Another really, really unique power he has is he can transmute his own body and turn himself into a philosopher's stone and use his own soul as fuel for his alchemy. So he can actually enhance the power of it. But once again, this goes back to what is the Philosopher's Stone. It's just a stone that is just basically a ton of compressed human souls into a stone form. And we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of souls. Well, he's able to utilize just his own soul, but it does give a lot of, it's a huge cost just for a small bang, if you will. So not generally worth it, but he has used it a few times in Brotherhood. He's also got some novice medical alchemy skill. He can heal some wounds, not all. And destruction alchemy is exactly as I just described earlier. He just destroys objects. He was able to actually go and just rip right through, just using his destruction alchemy, he can just rip right through armor. He was able to do that to a couple of convicts that were soulbound to bodies of armor. They couldn't tire. He had no way of defeating them outside of using destruction alchemy. So he did that as there was no other way to save his brother and his friends, or himself. So, what do you guys think so far? You guys think... Are you guys thinking more Edward Elric at this moment, or are you guys thinking more Debug? Just to get into a few things here, okay? Data analysis, there was no need for it this episode, just because it's all explained throughout the feats and their background details. Okay, so let's look at a couple character pros and cons. So if we look at that, we're going to look at the backgrounds first, because this is going to play a factor here, which is reach. Well, that's pretty much a no-brainer. Debug is 6'4" tall. Weighs 180 pounds. Okay, he's a little older, so roughly their combat experience should be relatively pretty close, besides the fact that Edward Elric has had a, well, okay, I don't want to say they're super close, but age-wise, their maturity levels and all this, they're roughly about the same, kind of. But when you're looking at reach, Edward Elric doesn't even have close to the amount of reach initially that Debug does. As for, let's look at a few strengths that Debug's going to have against him. Anything he's conjuring, it is physical, but it's essentially like a hard light. It doesn't have any weight. Keep in mind, this is a guy that doesn't have a very high strength capacity, and he's able to go and wield a two-handed giant cleaver, and also be able to leap in the air 50 feet in the air, keep that in mind, and he can dive, bomb, and do things like this. So when it comes down to it, there's no weight. Is he going to be able to still strike with enough power? Well, once again, this comes down to the armor. What is the armor and the equipment sets? What are they capable of? What do they bring to reality in this sense? And that's how that kind of works out. So, but it's hard light. So is he going to be able to transmute hard light? No. Is it physical? Yes, but it's light. It's hardened light. So it's a radio frequency that is essentially hardened. Yeesh. So there's not really a whole lot he's going to be able to do. He's not going to be able to transmute the weapons. He'll try and fail every time. He can't transmute it. He would have to adjust the frequency, essentially, is how you'd be able to go and counteract it. That's a way you could do it, but that's counteracting light frequency rather than radio frequency. And it's essentially, he'd be like almost battling magic. So, another strength that Debug comes equipped with is his versatility. He can literally bring tons and tons of damage really quickly on. Can he actually hit with fire? Yeah. Dragon fire. It's magic. Those roots, they're hard light, so he'd have to still cut through them, and he could do that. They still break, but they shatter. The thing is this, so when they break, they break. But the roots itself would be a very, very huge advantage because it could quickly immobilize Edward Elric. And then it would sap him of energy. So this would be essentially, this is just going to be damaging him. And so this would be just something kind of just overall just damage. It'd probably hit him and fatigue the heck out of him and cause his body to ache. So, but on top of that, he's also going to have durability. He's got quite the durability. He's able to withstand 50 cal, a continual 50, well, pretty close to 50 to continual 50 caliber shots at him, and he's able to just with his earthen guard armor equipped, using the rock walls and all this, and his shield, he's able to just tank the hits, no problem. That's quite a bit of force, and the closer he gets, the more force it has. So there's that. But Edward Elric and him roughly have very, very similar, not quite the same, but they have similar kind of feats because they're able to take high amounts of damage and kind of just tank it. Now, Edward Elric gets hurt during his encounter with Envy, but while, you know, it's a much greater feat, it still comes down to the fact that durability-wise, those 50 cal bullets weren't doing anything to him. So, take that in consideration. They're roughly about the same kind of durability we've got. So, as for Edward Elric, his strength he's going to have over him, he's going to have versatility. He's going to be just as quick, roughly, as, well, I guess not just as quick, but he's going to be able to swap into different kinds of equipment pretty quickly. He can go from using a spear, which he can just pull from the ground. As long as there's iron in the area, he can pull a spear directly out of the ground. If he really wanted to, I'm sure he could just go and make a stone spear if he needed. But he's going to have the versatility of weaponry as well. He's going to be able to go and summon rock walls and things like this. It's not going to be the same. He's also got the same capability. He can summon golems too, if he really wants to. He can just go and summon a golem to attack. And we know he's able to do that because he did that in the first episode, I believe it is. First or second episode of Brotherhood, when he was in the town of Lior to go against the evil theocracy there. He was able to go and summon and animate some of the stone golems throughout the city of the sun god. Well, given 60 seconds or so, Debug can also summon a giant golem. Now, it's not quite the same height, nor would it be the same weight, but he can summon golems as well. But keep in mind, alchemy over there is considered a science. However, we have to go back to what is magic. Isn't magic just a higher form of science that we don't quite understand yet? I know I'm definitely pulling from Thor on that one, but think about it. Wasn't medicine considered magic at one point? Mm-hmm. Now, that's the basis of it generally in most documents when it came down to how magic is described in fiction, right? Magic is something that either there is a cost for it, which is how magic works, typical magic works rather, in the Crowverse. However, Debug's magic is technically magic. It's tech, biological, and magic, all infused together. What was the cost? Well, he is the cost. He's already been infused with it. He's captured it. So, I can't say exactly why it's magic, though. That spoils a big part of Debug's story. So, just kind of have to trust me on this. So, the golem thing, I mean, he's got a lot of the same kind of utility. But he's got another one. See, now he's got destruction alchemy, which just destroys things. As long as he knows what it's composed of, he can just completely destroy it. So if he figures out, okay, this isn't carbon, this isn't steel, this isn't some kind of anything like this, what else could it be? Ed's a very smart guy. He's quick to figure things out. Now we know he's capable of this because he was able to do that against Greed, figuring out what his body composition turns to when he puts on his armor, his ultimate armor, right? He's able to quickly decipher what the composition is. Just based from a few strikes, the way it sounds, the way it feels, he's able to really quickly deduce it. Also with some knowledge on homunculi as well. How they operate, how they work, all that. Quickly deduces it and is able to make quick work of him. Now he does this in several fights against different opponents. He deduces all sorts of things about him and how to counteract them. So would he be able to find ways around Debug's pixelmancy? In some cases, yes, but not around everything. Because there's Dragonfire, there's all sorts of other things that would go into it. Now, could Edward Elric use any kind of, like, could he utilize anything, like, weakness-wise? Debatable. He's got a couple things that could, but all Debug has to do is he can just switch. He can use his pixelmancy and switch at any time and keep going to different sets, so he can alter his weakness literally on the fly. So that's going to make some kind of issue, but he can always... Edward Elric is also known for his intelligence, so trapping opponents is pretty much 101 for him. So that's where his biggest strength is going to be, but they're both highly intelligent guys, so you're going to have to keep that in mind too. But Edward Elric also has the weakness of anger him, and, well, he's also easily angered, so you anger him and it's basically over. So he's going to get angry, he becomes more and more rash. And then he starts doing some things that are irrational in a fight. All right, so last thing we've got, any guesses? You guys have any thoughts at all? Who could possibly win this? I'll give you guys till 10:04. Ding, 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 ding. And the winner is Debug. And the reason being is because he's able to switch things at a higher rate. Their feats of durability are equivalent. Debug's strength is never taken into consideration for his abilities. So really, he doesn't need a strength feat to be damaging because, well, he's already holding giant cleavers and he's able to wield them at their best, the best he can offer at least, all due to his pixelmancy. So everything, his strength and all this, he gets all sorts of strength and all this that's not really looked at per se. It's going to be easy to keep up with Edward Elric while essentially almost maintaining a higher damage capability for his attacks. Is Edward Elric going to be able to take all these attacks? Yes. Is he going to be able to take them all continually? No. Now this is where it comes down to versatility. He's got the Tree Ant set, Salamandrake, he's got the Jelly Armor, and if he absolutely needs to, he can go and have Edward rooted down, switch into his Gilded Set 1, and he can go in for the finishing blow right then and there. Because at the end of the day, in a fight, in quote-unquote reality, stab to the face, stab to any part of the body, it's damaging. There's no damage calculation per se. It's just, ouch, crap, oh no, and then you can go for the killing blow. He's going to be able to come to that outcome more often than not. However, Edward Elric, if his alchemy could affect light waves, which we've never seen him actually be able to do, he could affect it that way, then he could actually disrupt him. But that's also, can the alchemy affect light waves? If it can affect light waves, we've never had any answer to that. We've never heard of any alchemy or anything like this. So, but if he could, that would be his edge against him. Because he's quick to figure these things out. Just because he can figure it out doesn't mean he's going to be able to win. Because if he can't transmute it, he can't stop it necessarily. Well, he can't catch it, he can't undo it. He's left with fighting against somebody he can't really It's almost like fighting a ghost, if you will. All right. As for Monday's big battle, we got a good one. We got a doozy here. We're going to have Wolf, which is another one of my characters, taking on Red Hood from DC. Now, this fight might seem very, very one-sided. Just keep that in mind. My characters don't always win. They don't. They have so far. Kipo is very close. So is this one. Kind of. But this one, these guys are more closely matched than you'd believe. But as for some other details, we have the Officer Becker report video is going to be releasing, I'm aiming for Sunday night. So that should be out. And then if not, it should be Monday morning. It should be available. We also have a couple more TikTok videos I'm releasing here. I should have another one out here in the next hour or two. And there should be another one or two tomorrow as well. So just expect some more TikToks coming. There's more of my normal content is coming. We've also potentially we might be doing a Wednesday night stream as well, which is going to be roughly about as long as this. Not very super long, but we're going to go over some investigative work as well, and just basically all we're going to do this time around. We're just going to go and give awareness. We're not going to be doing as much solving. I'm going to be working on those, and will be left to TikTok. I'm going to go and start putting all my investigative work up there. We do have Death of the Family that will be released on this channel as well, so be on the lookout. Those trailers are coming back to this channel as well. So, but thank you guys for tuning in, and we will be back on Monday night. Actually, no, we'll be back on Sunday morning. All right, well, afternoon. Real News Now is on Sunday as well, so be sure to be on